Senator Purtle.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator. And I appreciate your intent with this bill. I really do. I think as much information as we can to the public. I feel that this may result in funding things just for saying, hey, look what I funded. Where now, when we go back to my community, I say, look what we did as a collective group, that we were able to put these money in these projects. And we're saying, look, I gave this amount, I gave this. It's not my money, it's the public's money. And so I hope that it doesn't create conflict or rifts between my other legislators in my area, because as it is now, we just fund things as a group. And, you know, I really don't feel like I need the attention for, oh, you know, you gave this amount, thank you so much. It's more about, hey, this is what was funded, it's in the bill, and, you know, who gave what and how much, I think is not important to me, because it's the public's money. And I'm just afraid of what might happen in the future and the politicization of capital outlay. So I do have a few concerns with that part of it. You know, if this might be an Albuquerque problem, trying to figure out who put what where, because there are, I was trying to count a minute ago how many just here for Bernalillo. But in my neck of the woods, it's not an issue. And I had $58 million worth of projects, because cities or municipalities like Hagerman, Lake Arthur, they all have $3, $4, $5 million water line projects that they need. So there's huge needs in my area, and there's very little capital outlay money. But you know, I really hope that this doesn't pit me against my fellow legislators, where for simplicity, I'll throw $400,000 in one, so we don't all have to chip in 25 and figure out, well, how much more do we need to complete it? And the way it is now, I can do that. They can throw a little bit in some other projects, and when we go home, hey, we were able to get funding for Eastern New Mexico University. We were able to get some funding for the Sheriff's Department, and we did it as a group. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but I believe that's going to be an unintended consequence of this legislation. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator.
Well, Madam Chair, I think you touched on a couple things. Number one, it would require more work on our part. Number two, we may have to go back and explain to our constituents what we did and why. And number three, like you said, it is not our money, it's the public's money. So I kind of keep falling back on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Senator Sanchez and then Senator R Soto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as Senator Purtle was mentioning, you know, it's a lot easier for you all that are in Albuquerque in this little area. I'm talking about area, not people-wise. But when you have 5 municipalities, 4 counties, 4 tribes, land grants, and you pit one against the other, say, I can put in this, but I can't put in this. I mean, that causes tension in our districts.
Madam Chair and Senator.
You have 848 to put in a small area, where I have 848 to put in all these areas, and then I have 4 tribes also. I mean, I understand and I appreciate what you're wanting to do, but it could cause some problems for some of us that are outside the Albuquerque area.
Madam Chair, Senator, I don't understand what kind of problems it would cause. Disclosure of how we're spending taxpayer money. It may be uncomfortable for legislators to have to take the time to explain it.
Chair, Senator, you represent one city. I represent 5. And they'll say, you know, in my district, they'll say, why did you put in this city and not in this one?
It requires an explanation, Madam Chair, Senator, and they should get it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator R Soto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I recognize I'm in an urban area, and so my situation is very different from the rural legislators, and the demands are very different from those of rural legislators. But I really want to thank you for bringing this. You know, the reason why 41 senators turned in their capital outlay is because I didn't sign any of the lists this year. I didn't sign any of the lists this year because I personally feel it to be somewhat disingenuous to sign off on I think what I had on my desk, $22 million, when I only have $640,000 to be able to appropriate. 848 to be able to appropriate. Thank you. $848,000 to appropriate. And the thing is, what happens is, and I did appropriate the money, and I'm happy to make that public. And on my website, I have a list by category of on my personal website. I have a listing since I've been a senator of what I've appropriated to different agencies over the years. Because I think it's important that the public know that. So what happens is if I sign one of the forms that everybody's running around with, what that really does is that generates a project number. If 15 of us sign the form for the same project, what that results in is still a single project number. And so, in my case, and this would be different for the rural legislators, because for the rural legislators, some of them, they're the only ones who would be authorized in that project. Every project that I was asked to participate in was a project somebody else was already signing off on. And so every single one of them already had a project. So my signing off on them didn't generate any new project numbers. Personally, where I would like to see us ultimately go on capital outlay, and this is just my idea, and that's not to say that it's one that would find favor with either chamber. But I would like to see us get away from signing those initial forms altogether, and simply have a methodology by which people with a project can get a project number, and then have them come talk to us and tell us, here's what I need funding for, and here's the project number. And then instead of having the public list and the super secret private list, which is the one that actually appropriates the money, have only a single list, which is what actually gets appropriated based upon the project numbers that people are able to generate, regardless of somebody signing, if it's a project that qualifies in terms of the various different requirements for capital outlay. So, that's the direction I would like to go. I know Senator Campos here has been working on this issue for years in terms of finding a way to do different things on this. It's a and I understand also, and I want to be really clear about this, is that as much as I feel very strongly that we need to have disclosure on this, I just also want to really say and support the fact that I recognize it's a different political situation for the urban legislators than it is for the rural legislators. And I don't have the experience of the rural legislators in terms of how to deal with that. And the needs are vast and diverse. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I could, and I appreciate that comment, and I've said this before many times with many bills, whether it's public safety, education, healthcare, whatever it is. There's a rural and kind of an urban perspective to all these things. And problems that exist in urban areas don't necessarily exist in rural areas, and the solutions don't. So I didn't mean to be dismissive. I do understand and appreciate that, and I try to be cognizant of that. You and I as urban area legislators, it's a totally different deal. But I think this gets back to just the essence of it is taxpayer money, and at the end of the day, we have to account for it, and we have to explain it, should have to explain it, what we did. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator. I just want to use this opportunity because those of you in the audience sometimes don't realize a lot of the political fights in this building aren't Republican Democrats, Albuquerque against the rest of the state. And the reason there's so many people in Albuquerque on this, or the Albuquerque area, is because there's only one person in Albuquerque on Senate Finance, and that's by design. Look around here, all the people from Albuquerque are here. Senate Finance doesn't have any Albuquerque, and that's half the population. I represent, you got one. Well, I got one out of, 14? 14, 13, whatever it is. So you represent half the people of the state on Senate Finance. So those dynamics on capital outlay are different, but aren't that much different when you represent. I represent the city. I represent Burlington County, which I have a large unincorporated area. I also have an Indian tribe, a Sandia Pueblo, all asking capital outlay. But when you're in Albuquerque, senators, we also get requests from UNM, the zoos, all the museums, that everyone in the state uses as their quality of life effort, be it the hot air balloon, all the other museums in Albuquerque, the dance groups, all those other things that we all as a state cherish and use all the time. And we all have constituents, by the way, who are lobbying us for those issues that might not be in our district. But we're all putting money into things that help increase the quality of life for all of New Mexico. So it's a different dynamic, but we have our own challenges in Albuquerque that aren't just everything else. We have the same water issues, same road issues, same everything else issues, and we have the issues with different government agencies asking for something. So senators, it does impact us the same way. And I think I need to explain to Sandia Sandia Pueblo, if I don't fund their water well, which they need, and I put money into a dinosaur museum or something like that, I need to be able to explain that, I believe. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Steinborn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, thank you for bringing another transparency bill. You know, this is a really interesting issue, disclosing capital outlay, because New Mexico has our system. We are the only state in the country, allegedly, that designates a little piece of capital in a surplus budget situation to every legislator to have broad latitude on how to appropriate. It's pretty extraordinary because we have this carte blanche opportunity, responsibility to decide who we're going to give money to. And you can do some very entrepreneurial things when you have that opportunity. On the other hand, it opens the door for lots of problems as well. I think a few years ago, New Mexico got an F from Governing Magazine for our capital outlay system because it was so broad, but also left opportunity for malfeasance. And so it just is what it is. It's money, and a lot of it. So I think this is a really helpful reform, Senator, just because it does put some accountability or transparency into that system, which they are taxpayer dollars, they're not our dollars. So we should, at the end of the day, be able to explain that, even though we do have to make trade-offs. But I think knowing that it's going to be public sometimes will help, maybe frankly, to make better decision-making on scrutinizing exactly every penny we place on where we choose to do so. But not easy doing this job sometimes, that's for sure. And but at any rate, appreciate the legislation, and I think it's important. Thank you.